Hello, all, and welcome to this late afternoon's beer review, which I am dubbing the okay beer review. So everything's okay, yeah, sort of, I guess, yeah. Anyways, I did my chores, deep cleaned everything, full sweep, mop, the whole dealio there, scrubbed the bathroom, all that stuff. And I also played colonization. Man, it's such a long mod right now. But I fought off an invasion of the Aztecs by the skin of my teeth. Like, literally, it killed my last musketman, and I was left with a bunch of pioneers fighting them with axes. And they survived until I could bring up some reinforcements, and my Mayan allies are now saving my behind. But yeah. Yeah, I love strategy games, as you can probably tell. Anyways, what are we reviewing today? We are reviewing new thing from Maui Brewing, brand new. I thought this was actually older, but it's actually really recent because usually Safeway doesn't get things first. But canned on 01/14/2022. So this is about as fresh as you can get beer, literally, in Hawaii without going to the actual brewery to go and buy the beer. Not sure why Safeway got it so quickly before, like, even Tamura's did. But this is Karoshi Rice Lager 4.0 ABV. And yeah, let's read the label here. Oh, no, no new label notes on that. Usually they have like label notes. Japanese style dry rice lager. So beers, macro brews in Japan are usually made with rice as a major adjunct. In America, the vast majority of macro lagers are made with corn as an adjunct, with the major exception being Budweiser, which also uses rice. But I think they use a higher barley in their amount of barley in their malt bill. So rice as a brewing adjunct leads to very crisp, dry beers. Hence, the most popular beer in Japan being Asahi Super Dry. It leads to a very dry taste. Now, I've already had like this one a little bit, so it's not exactly like a macro lager brewed, with rice. It has a bit more dimensionality to it, as you would expect with a craft beer, but as with the rice lager style, it is light, refreshing, and bone dry. Interestingly, the name Karoshi is the Japanese term for death by overwork. And I'm not sure why they picked that. I think when I was looking up this, it said it was something along the lines of the barley shortage due to the supply chain collapse. Well, I should say malt shortage, since they use more than barley. Um, has been very stressful for local brewers. We don't grow hops here. We don't grow barley here. We don't make the vast majority of adjuncts here. I mean, the only thing they could really say that is truly homegrown and homemade in regards to alcohol is certain rum brands based here, and they're very pricey. And so, without much further ado, let's just get straight to this. I need to replace this camera, man. But I'm going to use that to my advantage first. So let me go and... Perfect. A clear, very pale straw yellow. Very pale. Very pale yellow. It's almost one of the palest beers, craft beers I've ever seen. Very nicely carbonated, with a fizzy to frothy white head. Smells of grassy, somewhat herbaceous hopping. And dry, almost like almost like toasted rice puff, kind of, those dry rice cakes. It smells like that, those rice cakes. So toasted puff rice sort of smell. And grassy hops. Onto the palate. Finishes almost clean as a whistle. Just a hint of sweetness and malt. Very subtle hint of sweetness, but almost completely clean otherwise. More or less bone dry. Some mild hop bitterness that peaks in the mids. Carbonation bite is not as sharp as I'd expect. That's one thing I've noticed about a lot of rice lagers, Japanese lagers, is that they have quite a bit of bite to them. This one doesn't have as much of a bite. Bite from carbonation, that is. Very light, very refreshing. Malt body is almost imperceptible. Just a hint of, like, again, as in the nose, this sort of toasted rice puff kind of taste there. On the negative side, it's a bit watery. Especially in the mid to finish, you kind of feel like this sort of wateriness on the palate. And I think that a greater amount of carbonation and a slight oomph on the hopping or alcohol content, maybe up to about 4.5, would have made it a little bit less apparent there. But, tastes vary. To my palate, it's a bit watery in the mid to finish. Very light in body, very light in alcohol. 4.0, it's going to take about 2 or 3 of these for me to feel it, really. Other than that brief, sharp bitterness in the mids, not too much hop dimensionality. Basically lends to the dryness and the cleanness of the finish. And not too much tasting notes here, but you don't expect like a lot of taste complexity or depth in a rice lager. That's not what the style is about. It's about a sort of piercing, dry cleanness. So I actually am enjoying this. Like I said, the only real drawback for me is it's slightly watery towards the finish, texture-wise in my mouth. Might not be like that for other people. As it is, I enjoy it. There are no real off tastes to it, which is something that can happen with a style that is so light and so dry and kind of delicate. Some of the cheaper rice lagers in Japan kind of have almost a metallic or chemical taste to it, just because, not because, it's bad or anything like that, but just because it is. I'm trying to think of the correct words to use here. It's so lightly and delicately flavored that any flaws aren't going to be able to be covered up by the malt body or the hopping. This one doesn't have any flaws along those lines. So what you're left with is a refreshing, clean rice beer, suitable for eating with sukiyaki or Japanese hot pot, and or even sushi. To be honest, I don't think beer actually goes well with sushi. I'm still trying to find like an alcohol that goes well with sushi. Something about that sweet rice vinegar, it just kind of clashes with a lot of things other than certain kinds of sweet sake. But I'm rambling on and I digress. Karoshi, rice lager, crisp, clean, maybe just a little bit too watery for some people like myself, but still well worth a try. And that is your beer review for this afternoon, folks. Kampai.